Hi everyone, Jay Eggerstuff here previewing game week 33 of the Fantasy Premier League. So I'm filming this on Wednesday at lunchtime, and I know we've got a whole bunch of games tonight for the double game week 32. So the next deadline, of course, is Friday. So I wanted to get this content out just for the time constraint to get it out to you as early as possible, because I know what you lot are like. You're probably planning already for not just this weekend, but beyond that as well. So hopefully there's not going to be too much stuff tonight that is an absolute game changer and therefore make some of this content not as relevant. But a lot of the teams that are playing tonight aren't playing in game week 33 anyway. So let's get stuck in, shall we? So pretty tough for me to tell you how I've done in game week 32 because I don't know. At the minute I'm on about 53 points, I think, and I've got 9 players left to play. So I could be in a brilliant mood by this time tomorrow, or could be in a terrible mood. But the good news is the deadline's on Friday, of course, so we're straight back into the action for the next game week, so not too much time to dwell on it. So I thought what I've kind of done this week, we'll chat about the donut, the left field options, the captain options, the usual stuff. But in terms of the game week 33 preview, because there's a reduced fixture list, I've been able to actually really analyse and have a proper good look at some of the factors around each team. So I'll kind of go through each one. I think we talked about this in game week 31, when there was other fixtures missing. Liverpool had that decent fixture at Fulham in that game week, and I think again they've got a decent fixture to Southampton. So I think it's pretty obvious, isn't it, that you're probably going to want to have 3 Liverpool players in your team for this game week. So that's probably a combination of Robertson, Alexander-Arnold, Mane, Salah, Firmino. Probably not too many other names floating around that are super obvious. Maybe Van Dijk. But I think the fullbacks probably offer better value. So I think it goes without saying, if you don't have 3 Liverpool players this week, I think that should be a priority to try and address that. Challenging for the title, they're on form, they've had a rest, they need to win, playing a team towards the bottom of the league. All the signs are there that hopefully that could yield some points. I think the next best team to look at is probably Leicester. They've got the form with Brendan Rodgers, they've got the fixture with Huddersfield. Huddersfield are already down, so Leicester we've seen, I think, has Rodgers won 3 out of 3 now, so pretty appealing if you've got people like Vardy, Maddison, maybe even Harvey Barnes on your radar. I think a little bit of disappointment amongst managers, people like Pereira, I always say these names wrong, don't I? But Ricardo, he's not returned tons of points. He did get a clean sheet last time round, and of course he'll have got a clean sheet. Who did they play weekend? They played Bournemouth, didn't they? And they got a clean sheet there, but many of us won't have him because we're all doing the free hits or maybe wild card. So my only caveat to the Huddersfield match for Leicester is that we've seen over the years when teams are already relegated that for some reason it takes a hell of a lot of pressure off them and they actually start playing quite well. So it's a really funny one because Huddersfield are going into that game, they've got nothing to play for, the pressure is completely off. Maybe we'll see an improvement in their performance, which is a bit of a funny concept, but we have seen that over the years in the Premier League. But I still think a form Leicester team with Rodgers motivating them is still a great fixture. Bournemouth, they're playing Burnley. Interesting one here because it looks to me if Bournemouth can win that game, they're pretty much safe. So that'll put them on to 41 points, which is pretty much as good as job done for them in terms of survival. Burnley, they got to win last time out, and their fixture list is really tricky between now and the end of the season. So you do look at every game is important when you're in the relegation battle, and when it's a game that you feel that you could get a positive outcome from, so maybe a draw. I mean, obviously it'd be great if they got a win for them, but I do think they'll be looking at this game, Burnley, and thinking, can we take a point? Because every point we take will be really crucial between now and May. Maybe they'll go there and look to defend. Are they good enough to hold off that renowned Bournemouth attack? Remains to be seen, but that could prove an interesting one. Interesting as well, and I couldn't believe some of the facts around these two teams. So Newcastle, Crystal Palace, you look at that on paper and you think, you know what, that'll probably be quite a low-scoring game. And again, for both these teams, you think a win for either of these teams, and they're as good as safe. That'll put them not quite to 40, but I think about 38-ish points. I couldn't believe this. Newcastle have won their last 5 home games in the Premier League. They've won every single one. But on the flip side, Crystal Palace have only had 1 away loss since early December, and that was the 4-3 defeat to Liverpool. So that's, still a pretty, in a funny way, quite a credible result to have gone to Anfield and scored 3 goals. And that included winning, in that run they've won at Man City, at Wolves and at Leicester. So 3, fairly, certainly the Man City one, tough places to go. So your instinct says that'll be quite, you look at it on paper and you think low scoring, but the facts say that maybe there'll be quite a lot of goals in that game. So people maybe with Palace defenders, lots of people will have Wan-Bissaka, I imagine. How likely is a Palace clean sheet in that game? I thought at first that would be, half decent chance, but maybe the stats and the facts are saying otherwise. A team that are defending really well at the minute, and big credit to their manager because his job was really on the line. They'd had some really poor results, but it's actually their defence that has got them back on track, and that's Everton. They've had 4 clean sheets in the last 5, and they'd have made it. They were halfway there to making it 5 clean sheets. They were 2-0 up away at Newcastle and somehow managed to lose 3-2 a few weeks ago. So they are on a good run of form. They're in that mini league, aren't they, where there's sort of Wolves and West Ham and Watford and Bournemouth aren't too far away, where people are trying to compete for 7th position. So they've got that home fixture against Arsenal. We look at Arsenal's form on the other hand, so they've had 1 away win since December in the Premier League. So you look at that and you think, maybe last time out Everton at Goodison got a good 2-0 win against Chelsea. I watched them in their game against West Ham last weekend, and I thought they played really, really well. They controlled the game, and for the first time from watching them this season, they actually looked like they had a clear structure to their play and a clear well-defined strategy and system that was working. Andre Gomez really pulling the strings in midfield, and the 2 full-backs getting forward really frequently as well. So you look at that game and you think, could Everton continue that good run and give Arsenal a challenge? Arsenal, of course, have been brilliant at home, not so good away from home. And then that brings us on to the final game, Chelsea West Ham. So these guys are like the Jekyll and Hyde, aren't they, of the Premier League? Chelsea can beat Tottenham 2-0 and then they can go and get that really poor result away at Everton and lose 2-0, and likewise West Ham can produce a great result coming from behind to beat Huddersfield, and then they turn up and frankly West Ham against Everton, that was one of the poorest performances I'd seen by a Premier League side for a long time. Really bad. But interestingly, lots of you, including me, will have Felipe Anderson in your team. He was injured for that game, so if he's available for Monday, you'd expect him to play. And maybe that's just a small bit of good fortune that West Ham was so poor without him in the team, and that means that they're going to want to put on a much better performance against Chelsea. And maybe that's good news for Felipe Anderson. Maybe they'll look to him to be the one to catalyse that progress and that good performance. It's interesting as well. I'd like to see how Chelsea play tonight. Obviously, they've got Brighton. Hazard didn't play so much. He was a cameo against Cardiff. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays before making a call on whether we want to bring him in. I don't have him at the minute for game week 30. What are we on? 33. I'm not sure if I can get to Hazard without making a minus, so I don't think I'll bother. But if he scores a hat-trick tonight, then I might have to rethink that one. Okay, so that's the sort of analysis there. The donut for this week, I said last time we'd wait and bring it back this time round, and there's a fantastic contender. So I know we haven't seen tonight's games, but Ashley Young conceded late goal on Saturday to lose his clean sheet, and then managed to get himself sent off last night. So commiserations. I was really relieved because I had Ashley Young when I was doing my free hit team. I had the list of people that were the likely picks, and he was on my differential list of players, and I fortunately didn't go with him, which is a relief because that would have been a net of -1. So Ashley Young, you're the donut of the week, I'm afraid. Left field options, let's chat about that. So pulled out 3, not easy when you've got such a reduced fixture list. So I've pulled out a player. I know I've just talked about the likelihood of Newcastle Palace involving goals. So I have pulled out a player that hasn't been around for a while. He's had a bad injury, but when he was playing regularly in the FPL a few years ago, he was a regular goal scorer from defence. Back in, I know this is a good few years, but 2015-16, he got 5 goals and 2 assists in 35 games. So it's a pretty good return for a defender. And that's Crystal Palace's Scott Dan. Not many people will own him. He's available for 4.4. So maybe if, like I've said there, you're trying to get to Hazard or Mane and you need to free up some budget, he could be one to look at. And then for midfield and attack, I pulled out 2 of the Everton players that I think are on form. Sigurdsson, always like this guy from an FPL perspective, takes the set pieces, does take penalties, does seem to miss quite a few penalties, but nevertheless gets to take the next one for some reason. But he's always in and around the action, likes to take plenty of shots. And up front, he's been playing really well the last few games. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a budget striker, so again, if you need to free up money, maybe he could be a good option for you. Doesn't seem to score that many, but he's always quite reliable for assists. Really good in the air, so his hold-up play and his flick-ons and things can be quite good. So maybe he's an option if you need to free up some money somewhere. And then finally, the captains. Not easy this week, so I'll talk you through the 4 that I've pulled out. So I've pulled out Salah, obviously, Mane, I've looked at Vardy, and of course I've looked at Hazard. So I think we can put Hazard to one side in the point I said that we want to see him really back to full form against Brighton tonight before we perhaps factor him in. Vardy, of course, Rodgers has really talked him up at Leicester. They've got that good fixture, but at the same time they are away from home, and we have got that little danger that Huddersfield might actually turn up and play okay. Still don't think still think he's a good shout, but I can't see how you can not back one of the Liverpool players at the minute. They have to win. If I've worked this out right, I might be wrong actually because City play tonight, but irrespective of when City do or don't play, they need to win, don't they, if they're going to win this league. Southampton, maybe a banana skin. They've had 3 wins in the last 4, and they've won the last 2 home games. That included a win against Tottenham. But at the same time, they do always seem to concede. I know they've kept a couple of clean sheets in the run with the new manager, but at the same time, you've got to back Liverpool to score goals. So then it comes down to Salah v Mane. There's that probability part of me that wants to say just stick with Salah because he's not scored, or he scored 1 in 8 Premier League games since the middle of January. And you're thinking to yourself, a law of averages on probability is due a goal, but then you can look at it the other way, which is in that same time period, Mane scored 8 goals. It's hard to argue with the stats, isn't it? Salah, it would also appear, has lost penalties. If Milner plays, we saw against Fulham, Milner took the penalty. And there's that little extra bit of spice, which is Mane is going back to his old club. And you do tend to find that players want to turn up and put on a good show when they're visiting their old club. So I think, for me, you've got to go with the stats probably. And as I sit here right now, I'm leaning on Mane for me. Just because Salah, the facts don't lie, he's just not scoring enough, and whilst we could say he is due, probably the most likely outcome is they end up with maybe roughly the same amount of points, because if one of them scores a couple, there's every chance the other player would assist the goals, and it's not a million miles away in terms of the points return. So I think you could drive yourself around the bend thinking about that one, a bit like the Aguero and Sterling dilemma last week. But I think pick one, and the stats and the facts are leaning heavily on Mane. Finally, I just thought actually, just on that, if you are Mane and think about it, he's come out of nowhere a bit, hasn't he, for the race for the Golden Boot? So is he on about 17? And Aguero's now injured, and he's on... Is he on 18, 19? So if you're Mane, you probably sat there thinking, hey, I can win this Golden Boot. So there's another reason to maybe that adds weight to the argument for him. So hope that's of interest. Thank you for tuning in. I shout you guys out every week. My Patreon subscribers, thank you for all your support and for listening there. And again, thank you for you guys for tuning in every week, and enjoy the games tonight. Get ready with your planning, because we're straight into game week, I keep getting mixed up, don't I? It'll be game week 33 next time for the weekend, and then I think the following week is another Friday night deadline, so it's coming thick and fast, so get planning if you're not planning already. Enjoy it. Speak to you soon.